All right, Jesse, so let's get into it. You just got announced as the head coach for the Canadian men's national team. And what we want to know is, what was your process in making the decision to be the head coach of America's Hat?
I would say, you guys behind the scenes a lot, we have talked, and I've had a lot of discussions over the last year plus. A lot of good discussions, and then a lot of discussions where I just felt like the connection wasn't right, the process of the way different clubs and teams thought didn't necessarily mesh with me and what I believed was important to be successful. So, then as soon as I started the process with Canada, I was incredibly impressed. I will tell you right now that Kevin Blue, the Secretary General for Canada, is the best sports professional I've ever been around. He's incredibly sharp. He's intelligent. He can execute a plan. An intellectual, high level thinker, and so I'm excited to work with him. I think there's a lot of symmetry with that. And then thinking about the player pool and the kind of players that Canada has at its disposal, and thinking about how it fits with who I am. And you know what? There's another element to it. People always want to put coaches in these boxes, right? And you always want to say what's their win-loss record, and this is how they play football, and they are like this, and to me it's nauseating. It's absolutely nauseating, because most people have no idea what this is like and what it requires. And for the most part, I felt like being part of this program was going to allow me not only to think about how to impact the first team the most, but also the sport in the country. And I think that there's a more holistic vision for me being the head coach of the Canadian national team than just what are the wins and losses. And obviously, I always know that I'll be judged by those things. And the success of the first team in the 2026 World Cup will be the most important thing for me to manage. But there's so much more that can be done in Canada to help the sport continue to grow, and I want to make a real positive impact in that way. So all those things kind of combined made me feel like it was the right time to get back to work.
Well, Jesse, you know me. I got to give you one of those Chuck questions where it's got a couple things to it. For me, I know just how passionate you are about coaching, and I think over the past year or so, we started to get close, and I understand you a lot better now, and I understand what you're trying to achieve and how far you want to go. And when I saw how you did with Salzburg, and then you went from Salzburg to managing the Premier League, and Europe felt like this is something you want to conquer. You want to achieve the greatest of accomplishments there, and you take this job. Is it Europe still where you want to be in the end, or do you feel like this job has taken you out of that equation, at least in the short term? Is this something that you still want to do? Is that still part of your passion? Because I feel like, when you go into the international management role, it's, maybe it's not as easy to get back into club football, especially maybe in Europe.
Look, the short answer is yes, of course. I want to be always considered and considering big roles. But, it's almost like the higher that I went, the more disappointed I was in the way that things operate, right? And people think Leeds is such a big club, but if you peel the veil away, we were a club that was in disarray when I got there, very financially a mess, and it made then managing everything very difficult. But I decided to take that on, and I tried to do the best I could with it. And for me, listen, I've gone through it about Leeds, and I don't need to go through it again. But it was a mess before I got there, and shortly after I left, it was a mess again, right? And so the work that we did in that time was stable, was strong, and on the inside, we felt really good about it. And that's and I consider my time at Leeds, in terms of the work that was done on the inside and the relationships I had with the players, a big success for me. It was personally very enjoyable, and I point specifically at my times in New York, my time in Salzburg, and my time in Leeds. And I'm very thankful to have worked with those players and those people on the inside of those clubs. And when I use that as both a learning process and a marker for me on what I think is important in doing work, right? I've said this to you guys already. I don't need to work. I love to work. But because I love to work, I have to protect, I think, the ways that I think about how to work and who to work with. And again, this led me down this road with Canada that made me feel like the people were amazing, and the opportunity to actually be able to work and impact things is what inspired me, right? And people to do it with.
Okay, so Jesse, and I'm sure like you got a lot of texts about this opportunity and you taking this opportunity with Canada. And my first initial response was, at least it's not Mexico, because historically that's our big rival, right? So, but as things stand currently, Mexico, the drop off is real. They've recognized it. They're clearly changing and making some decisions with Jaime Lozano in charge. They're going to bring in more young players for Copa America, obviously with eyes to 2026. Now in that, I guess, transition moment, it feels like Canada is now emerging as our potential top rival, at least in the near term. And so how does it feel to potentially go to a rival of the U.S.? And I love everything that you're going to bring. And like Chuck said, we really value you and your methodology and your ideology as in terms of your approach and the holistic approach to the game and how you want to coach. I've learned a ton from you already, especially behind the scenes, just talking about coaching in general. But how does it feel to essentially go to a rival? Because I know it's not Brazil, Argentina, but and Canada's super friendly, so you kind of just like, that's all right. But then when you start to strip it away, it's still a rival.
Listen, I obviously growing up in the U.S. and contributing and playing for the national team, playing for the youth national teams, coaching at the World Cup with the U.S. national team. My respect for U.S. soccer is big, but I went through a process with them, right? And I'm not going to go into it, but I wasn't treated very well in the process. And so whatever, man, that's in the past now. And now I'm fully focused. I was the minute it was done, I was like, okay, I'm moving forward and I'm going to figure out what's right for me. And again, it motivated me again to find the right people. And so now I want to talk about Canada because I'm excited I feel like it's a fan base and a player pool and a nation that resonates with me. I've worked there before. I know a lot of the people involved. Again, I think the talent pool of Canadian players is really good. We have a lot of work to do. That's one of the toughest things right now. Is even now I'm sort of on this amazing race tour around Europe to meet with some of the players and to like talk with them about how we're going to build this and what things we're going to value as we move forward. But I want to start to get to work, right? And I've said to a few of them already. From talking to them, from meeting them. They're incredible young men, and I know I'm going to fall in love with this team. And the hardest thing is going to be not working with them all the time, right? So I'm going to have to find ways to continue to engage myself and to challenge the staff, and then our relationships with the players, and then how we can impact the sport overall in Canada to make as big an impact as we can in the immediate future, which is this summer, and then beyond. And by the way, I've made it also clear publicly that. I know my task is to get us to 2026 and have an incredible performance. But, I think I'm going to love this job. I think I'm going to love the experience and the people that are working here. And I don't think it'll be out of the question for us to consider what it could look like long term.
How long till you know the national anthem? Okay.
I could sing it.
Are we dialed in already?
Already, Charlie.
That's right. Coach in Montreal. Coach in Montreal. Chuck. He's going first.
So what's first on the agenda for you? Because let's talk about this Canadian national team. What's first on the agenda for you, and what's your relationship like with a person like Joey Saputo, who you've played under before, and I think who helped you with your salary, right, along with the two other MLS clubs?
Yeah. So first, one of the first things is I'm trying to meet with the players, to sit down and talk with them, and so they can get to know me, and so that when we show up on May 31st to start working, it's not the first time they've seen me, and it's not the first time they've heard me. So I got a lot of phone calls and visits to make, and then I gotta really familiarize myself with all the important people that are in Canadian soccer. And I've had a lot of calls already, and so it's been a lot of little communications and little conversations, and then trying to put the staff together. And there's, I mean, I have like a list of 1,000,001 things. Right. So we got to make this quick, guys, because I got to get back to work.